Shot on Goal, Pucks and Rainbows Book 3. Written by L.A. Witt. Narrated by Michael Ferraiuolo and Nick J. Russo.
Chapter 1. Brad. Narwhals win! Narwhals win! The booming chant drowned out any and all other sounds inside the packed sports bar, especially since it included the voice of every member of the Vancouver Narwhals. Booze was flowing, fans were cheering, and in between chanting until our voices were trashed, my team was well on its way to collectively shit-faced. We'd be one miserable bunch of hungover babies tomorrow morning, but who the hell cared? After all, the Narwhals fucking won the cup. I threw back a shot of whatever one of my teammates had handed me. I grimaced, shook my head, and then joined the chanting again. We'd all busted our asses for this victory, and I didn't care how wrung out I was after tonight's game. I fully intended to party until I couldn't stand up. "All right, ladies." Colin spread his arms wide. "My body is ready." Everyone laughed, but several women were definitely eyeballing him like they wanted to take him up on the idea. Kinney's previous team had won the cup last season, just before they'd traded him to us, so he'd announced in the locker room that if we won tonight, he'd be celebrating his 2 cup victories by screwing 2 women. Judging by the pair of blondes in super-tight narwhal shirts who were already sidling up to him, that hadn't been all talk. Other guys had their wives and girlfriends nearby, exchanging looks that said their after-party plans were going to be rowdy. Keith Adams, my buddy and our captain, was discreetly texting, so I was pretty sure he'd be meeting up with his 2 boyfriends after he left. Sean and Justin had been at the game after all, and they probably would have come to the party too if not for some of the rumors flying about the 3 of them. Everyone knew Sean and Justin were a couple, and there was plenty of suspicion that Keith was more than just a friend who also ran a charity with them. That suspicion was correct, of course, but only a select few people knew that for sure, and we'd been sworn to secrecy. Scanning the room, I couldn't find a single member of my team who'd be sleeping in a cold bed tonight. Even those who, by all right, shouldn't have been able to move after that intense game. Especially those like Kinney and Keith who were planning threesomes. Whatever. If they could handle it, then more power to them. Me, I didn't have it in me for a threesome right now. Not really my thing anyway. But a little one-on-one, oh yeah, I could handle that. I sipped my beer, partly to wash down the aftertaste of that god-awful shot. I was flying high tonight, especially since several close saves of mine had kept the Krakens from beating us, but I was itching to leave the bar. Now that my teammates were locking down plans for naked after-parties, I wanted to get the hell out of here and find someone of my own to celebrate with. None of the guys in this bar had piqued my interest, and I was always nervous about trying to connect with someone in a venue that wasn't explicitly gay. I was rather proud of still having all my teeth after all these seasons as a PHL goalie, and I didn't want someone's fist ending that particular streak. So, whoever I was doing tonight, he wasn't here. I liked hookup apps, especially when the team was bouncing from city to city throughout the season. My schedule was so tight I didn't have time for the bar scene. Just swipe, exchange a few texts, and hook up. Not that I'd had the time or energy in months. Tonight I had the luxury of time, and I still had some energy left, even if it was probably pure adrenaline. The season was over. For the next 3 months, I could do what I wanted, when I wanted, and who I wanted, without constantly worrying about the next flight, the next city, and the next game. So, why not celebrate that temporary freedom, as well as the cup win, by taking a less hurried approach to hooking up? Though I'd lived in Vancouver for years and knew the city fairly well, the fact was clubs came and went, and it had been ages since I'd been to one, so I did a search on my phone. Turned out there was a gay bar a few blocks down and 1 street over. The place had pretty good reviews, and hell, what did I care? There were gay dudes there, and if I couldn't find one who wanted to come back to my place, well, I still had Tinder. I downed the rest of my drink, then made the rounds to say goodbye to my teammates. "What?" Rogers said. "You can't leave, we gotta... He flailed his hand, almost dumping his beer on the woman sitting next to him. "The MVP can't leave early, bro." I laughed, my face heating up. That part still didn't quite seem real. My first Cup MVP and the first goalie to win it in almost a decade, and I kinda did want to stay here and celebrate because fuck yeah. But I also wanted to hook up with someone tonight, ideally before the adrenaline wore off and I passed out from sheer exhaustion. Before I could respond to Rogers, Carlson, the goalie who hadn't played tonight, threw an arm around my shoulders and slurred, "You're leaving already? Dude, it's not even midnight." I know, but I grinned and held up my phone, a gesture that had become shorthand among my teammates as I just matched with someone on Tinder, so please excuse me while I go get laid. Hammered as he was, Carlson got the message and he clapped me on the shoulder. "Nice, man. Go get some dick." I laughed. It was great that the team was cool with me being gay, but Jesus. "All right, I'll catch you guys later." Hey! Rogers got up, clumsily slung his arm around me and shouted over the noise, "How about some love for our MVP?" He gave my chest a slap that made me grunt. "MVP! MVP!" The crowd joined in, and I laughed, and kind of wheezed as the whole bar chanted. The rest of my team came over for more high fives and clumsy drunk hugs, and I managed to bow out before they started buying me a round of literally everything the bar had to offer. By some miracle, I made it to the sidewalk, and I released a relieved sigh into the cool air. It was probably still hot out. It was summer after all. But after being squeezed into that place with a bunch of hockey players and fans, it was cool enough for me. I checked the address for the gay bar. Though it was only a few blocks, I'd also had a few drinks, and after the grueling playoffs, my stupid ankle was acting up. That lemon of a joint was only going to put up with so much tonight, and I decided I'd rather use it for fucking someone than hoofing it to the bar. So I grabbed a cab, and after the driver stopped in front of the club, I tipped her generously for taking me such a short distance. From the outside, the place didn't look like much. A nondescript dive bar, really, with some rainbow Christmas lights around the windows and a rainbow flag on the door. I'd seen plenty of clubs like it, the facades decorated so that they were simultaneously subtle enough not to piss off the homophobes, but obvious enough to attract the queer folks. I paid the cover and walked in, and not surprisingly, the interior was a lot less subtle than the exterior. Rainbows everywhere. A Tom of Finland print beside a stone wall was a riot poster. Yep, definitely a gay bar. A packed one, too. I grinned as I surveyed the scene. Hookup apps were fun, but a room full of booze and men looking for other men, that was how I wanted to celebrate tonight's victory. On my way across the room toward the bar, I made eye contact with a few men. One was hot, despite the New York Kraken's t-shirt, but I supposed I could let it slide if he let me take that thing off. First things first, another beer. I was lightly buzzed from the sports bar, but I didn't plan on drinking much. One more beer while I settled in, and I'd be good to go. When I reached the bar, I flagged down the bartender and ordered, and once I had a cold glass in hand, I looked around. A guy standing at the opposite end of the bar caught my attention, and I did a double take. He was looking right back at me, quite obviously leering at me, and his gaze rooted me to the spot. It wasn't creepy or unsettling, though, quite the contrary. I wasn't going to object to someone that hot looking at me like that because, hello, I could usually take or leave the whole silver fox thing, but this guy, Jesus, fuck. He was absolutely rocking the blazer and jeans look, which I loved anyway. The guy had shoulders for days, and the cut of his jacket made sure I couldn't miss the narrow hips and gorgeous ass. Then there was his face, Sharp features, intense dark eyes, short hair that was completely grey, and oh my God, that's Anthony Caruso. The glass slid out of my hand. The man looking me up and down wasn't just some random hot dude in a gay bar. That was the head coach of the New York Krakens, the team that had been 2 goals shy of snatching the cup away from the Narwhals tonight. He was younger than most head coaches. He'd started coaching earlier than most because his career as a player had been abruptly cut short. And I thought he was in his mid-40s or so. Maybe 15 years older than me, something like that. And he wasn't staying at the other end of the bar. He shouldered his way through the crowd, and the next thing I knew, I was staring straight into the eyes of Coach Caruso, and he was gazing right back at me. I wondered if he knew who I was, or if I was just another guy at the club. He looked me up and down, then locked eyes with me again. "Congratulations on your win." He sounded sincere, if a bit drunk, so I took it at face value and not a thinly veiled "fuck you" that should have been my team's title. Okay, apparently he did know who I was. Thanks. MVP too. He grinned. Impressive. I laughed nervously. Thanks. Man, I never thought I'd walk into a place like this and run into the legendary Coach Caruso. Hey, coaches gotta get laid too. The comment, coupled with the relentless eye contact, sent heat rushing through my whole body. Then he added, and we're off the ice. I'm not Coach Caruso right now. He paused to gesture at the bartender for a refill. Just call me Anthony. Oh, well, I swallowed. I'm Brad, but I guess you knew that. I thought that was your first name. I could only remember Spencer. I chuckled and shrugged. Well, that's what's on my jersey, so... I know. He took his drink from the bartender and nodded a thanks. After a sip, he met my gaze again. You're not up the street celebrating with your team? I was, but they're all finding people to celebrate with in private. I made a sweeping gesture around the club. Decided I should do the same. He nodded slowly, eyes never leaving mine. You're here to celebrate a win, and I'm here to fuck away a loss. He didn't even try to hide the long, down-up look he gave me or how it lingered for a second or two below my belt. When our eyes met again, the way his smoldered made my knees weak, and that was even before he said, Maybe we can help each other out. My heart went wild. Oh, yeah? Anthony closed some of the space between us. Why not? Holy shit. I'd come here hoping to hook up with some stranger for the night. I had not bargained for being in the crosshairs of Coach Caruso, and I sure as shit hadn't anticipated how much I'd want to bail on my drink, grab him by the shirt, and haul him into a men's room. I was usually the aggressive one, and now that someone was coming on to me, now that Coach fucking Caruso was coming on to me, my vocabulary was shot, and my restraint was gone. Somehow, though, I played it cool. You're a head coach. I grinned, despite my nerves. That mean you give good head? Okay, I tried to play it cool. In my defense, alcohol and Anthony? He ran the tip of his tongue along the inside of his lower lip. Well, maybe it means I'm good at coaching the guy who's given me head. I couldn't hold the grin, my mind suddenly overrun with images of this man fucking my face and telling me what to do, how to stroke, how far to take him, what to do with my tongue. That had never been a fantasy of mine, but suddenly it was Anthony's turn to grin, and he narrowed his eyes. I see I have your attention. Yeah, you do. He nodded toward the empty seat beside me. You mind if I sit? I glanced at it, then back at him. Sure, yeah, sit down. He went around me, fingers trailing across my lower back, and my spine straightened as I pulled in a breath. I couldn't remember the last time I'd been with someone so aggressively flirtatious, and oh my God, it was hot. He wasn't done either. He'd barely sat down before he curved his hand over my thigh, his fingers dangerously close to my growing erection. The two of us hooking up tonight would be kinda poetic, wouldn't it? I met his gaze. Well, how so? That grin, oh Lord. Well, think about it. Now, one of my boys could get a puck into your net tonight, but I bet I could get my dick into your mouth. He narrowed his eyes a little. Or your ass. I couldn't even breathe. The hand on my leg may as well have been around my throat, and just the thought of taking Anthony's cock down my throat or up my ass made me want to melt right there at his feet. I was usually the aggressive one, the one with all the smart-mouthed suggestions and double entendres, leaving other men slack-jawed and begging for more. Well, then along came Coach Anthony Caruso, and I was suddenly tongue-tied. And did this place have a restroom with sturdy walls? Because I was pretty sure whatever went down between us was going to need more than a flimsy stall divider to keep us upright. As I looked around for a sign leading to the men's room, though, my heart sped up, and not in a good way. With nothing more than a sweeping glance, I could pick out a dozen smartphones in people's hands. I had no doubt there were plenty more in pockets and otherwise out of sight. Some of my teammates joked that it must be hard to pick up guys in a club because gay dudes weren't into sports and wouldn't know who I was. People could make all the jokes they wanted, but stereotypes were bullshit. I'd betted more than a few of my own fans, and there was at least one guy in this room wearing a hockey t-shirt, which meant that all it took was one person recognizing Anthony or me, one smartphone snapping a photo, one guess who I saw photo on Instagram. Right now, we could easily get away with being an old gay coach and an old gay player who'd bumped into each other in a gay bar and talked for a few minutes. The hand on my leg was pretty much out of sight, and we hadn't done anything super blatant, assuming no one noticed the lip biting, the glances at each other's mouths, the lack of space between us, or that predatory look in his eyes whenever he met my gaze. If we walked out of here now, or if we slipped off to the men's room together, this would be all over social media before we'd even gotten our zippers down. Hooking up with another player, that I could probably get away with. Hooking up with a coach, especially right after our teams had faced off, that had scandals and suspensions written all over it. It could even end his career, maybe mine too. I honestly had no idea what the consequences would be for a player hooking up with another team's coach. What I did know was how close I'd come to losing my shot at a PHL contract in the first place. My ankle had very nearly cost me my career before it had even started. Was I going to let my dick end that hard-won career the same night I got my first Cup MVP? I hated myself for it, but I shook my head. We shouldn't do this. Anthony tensed, then withdrew his hand. I'm sorry. I avoided his gaze. I want to, but if it gets out. Wincing, I nodded. Anthony sighed, and he put a little space between us. It was worth a try. Yeah. I licked my lips and cautiously turned to him. Don't think I don't want to. He studied me for a moment while the thumping bass kept perfect time with my pounding heart. Then he leaned in closer. If you change your mind, he rasped in my ear as he slid his hand into the back pocket of my jeans. I'm in room 412 at the Westin Grand. I gulped. I couldn't even breathe, so I just nodded. The soft rush of air alongside my neck might have been a laugh. I couldn't be sure. And then Anthony withdrew his hand from my pocket. A moment later he was gone, and though the club was still crowded and hot, his absence left the air beside me empty and my body cool everywhere we'd been touching. I closed my eyes and pushed out a breath. Was I an idiot? I was an idiot. I'd always kept my nose clean, largely because I'd been so afraid to jeopardize my career after I'd come so close to losing it. So it wasn't like I had a long history of fucking up on or off the ice. If I got busted sneaking off one time with a coach during the off-season, would the backlash really be so bad? We weren't even in the same division. If I had allowed some goals and the Krakens had won tonight, then people would rightfully suspect that I'd conspired with Russo to throw the series. But his team had lost, and that MVP trophy had been mine because I hadn't let his players get a puck into my net. Whatever transaction someone could imagine going on between us didn't hold a lot of water. Was one hookup really that big of a catastrophe? Okay, probably. In fact, yes. I was almost sure it was. If I Googled all the various regulations the PHL had about every goddamn thing, there was probably some bylaw tucked in there somewhere that could be read as "Thou shalt not blow thy rival coach during the off-season, or thy career will be soundly fucked." But damn it, I wanted him. I just had the night of my life. Just hit one of those badass career milestones that I'd always coveted. As long as no one found out, then who the hell cared if I celebrated my cup win and MVP trophy in the opposing coach's bed? Heart still thumping, I reached into my pocket, and though I wasn't surprised by what I found, I still broke out in goosebumps as I took it out and turned it between my fingers. A key card for Westin Grand Hotel, in a tiny paper sleeve marked 412. Lead me not into temptation.
Chapter 2. Anthony. My heart was going a million miles a minute when I stepped into my hotel suite. There was no telling if Brad would change his mind and come to the room, or if I would be able to hold out until he did. All I could do was wait and see. Not that I could sit still. I was exhausted, but I was also keyed up with a need I hadn't been able to address in longer than I could remember. I'd been so stressed and busy with the team and the playoffs that I hadn't even jerked off in weeks. It had been months, a lot of months, since I'd been in bed with anyone. Now that the season and the playoffs were over, I had a brief break before the league draft, and I needed that release like nobody's business. God willing, I'd have it with that gorgeous blonde goalie who'd strolled into the bar earlier. It wasn't the first time I'd noticed Brad Spencer. I tried not to make a habit of looking at players the same way I looked at men I'd consider sleeping with, but Brad had caught my eye more than once. He was one of the top goalies in the league, so he was forever appearing in highlight reels, but he'd also been in a few magazine spreads, often without a shirt. I would never admit it out loud to a colleague, but I had definitely spent time looking at those magazine spreads through a less than professional lens. I couldn't help it. He was every inch the fit and chiseled professional athlete. He didn't have quite the same physique as the players who spent their time sprinting up and down the ice, but he had to be fast and agile in different ways. Some goalies were broad walls, which was ideal for reducing the puck's opportunities to get past them and into the net. Brad was on the taller end, 6'1" or so, I thought, since he had about 3 inches on me, but he was probably half as wide as my two goalies. He couldn't rely on his size to stop the puck. When a puck came at him at 80+ miles an hour, he had to be quick enough in the head to track it, fast enough in the body to get in front of it, and confident enough in his gear to believe it would protect him from it. Goalies reminded me of wildcats, lean, fast, fearless, and able to course correct on a dime if the puck changed direction. His mask probably protected me more than it did him. It kept his face safe from sticks and pucks, but it also kept it hidden enough that while I was at the bench with my players, I wasn't distracted by watching that intense concentration in his eyes. He laser-focused when he was on the ice, and when someone caught a video of his face, seeing him fixate on the puck in action made my skin tingle. Nothing in the world existed for him except that little black disc and the net behind him that would, if he had anything to say about it, remain empty. Goalies were inevitably wiped out after a game just from sweating under all that gear, and I'd known a few who would be mentally exhausted too. I suspected Brad was like that after most games. Watching someone like him in the net was frustrating as hell for an opposing coach. My best shooters could rarely get a puck past him, but it was mesmerizing for a gay man who'd gone too long without a taste of someone else. Then, meeting him, seeing those intelligent hazel eyes up close and personal, listening to him flirt in that low tenor and lyrical Canadian accent. Closing my eyes, I made a frustrated sound as I adjusted the front of my pants. God, I hoped he showed up tonight. Of course, if he was smart, he'd stay far away. This was a bad idea on every imaginable level, and we both knew it, but, at least for me, it was an irresistible one too. Bad idea or not, I still couldn't believe I'd approached him at all. Never mind been that forward. That wasn't like me. But tonight, I'd discovered the perfect formula of liquid courage, sexual frustration, and post-loss letdown to turn me into someone who moved in on a guy despite him being younger, hotter, and absolutely forbidden. Aggressive, hell, assertive wasn't usually my style. But after losing the cup, after months on end of nothing but stress and hockey, and after a couple of drinks, I'd taken one look at Brad Spencer and decided I was moving in before anyone beat me to him. Especially since several guys had also noticed him, and it was either take the shot or watch someone else do it. I'd been in, too. Damn. The way he'd looked at me, the way he'd shivered when I'd touched him, that hard-on straining against the front of his jeans. He probably could have had any man in that club, but at least in that moment, I'd been sure he wanted me. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. It wouldn't matter unless he walked through my hotel room door, and with each passing minute, my optimism waned. I checked my phone, then sighed and put it aside. It had been close to half an hour since I'd left that keycard with Brad, and the bar was only 15 minutes away. If he hadn't shown up yet, it was a safe bet he wasn't going to. It didn't even matter why. If he'd wisely realized this was a bad idea, if the game had caught up with him and he decided to sleep it off, if he'd found someone younger, The end result was that he wasn't here and I was. And while it was disappointing to be on my own, I didn't have the patience to go back out on the prowl or get on an app. There would be other nights. Tonight, I just needed to get off. I left my shoes by my suitcase and moved onto the king-size bed. Stripping out of these clothes could wait until I'd gotten off. For now, I sat back against the pillows and opened my fly, and I groaned as I gave my cock a long stroke. "Oh, fuck," I whispered into the silence. My thoughts immediately went to the hot goalie I'd briefly had a shot with at the club, and suddenly, I didn't want to hurry. This wouldn't take long, but I wanted to fantasize about him for a minute or two, so I closed my eyes and let images of him crash through my mind as I stroked myself slowly. The way I'd seen him tonight, in snug jeans and a button-up shirt. The way I saw him out on the ice, drenched in sweat and breathing hard. The way he'd eye-fucked the camera in a sexy shirtless magazine spread last... The lock on the door clicked. My hand stopped, and my eyes flew open. The door opened, and Brad Spencer stepped into my room. Instantly, his gaze went to my lap, and mine went to the front of his pants. I grinned. Apparently, we were both in the same state tonight. The thick ridge beneath his jeans made my cock even harder and even more eager for attention. I didn't dare move my hand because I would definitely go off if I did. Brad nudged the door shut behind him. "Hey." I struggled to speak, but managed. "I wondered if you'd change your mind." He swallowed. "I still think it's a bad idea." "But you're here." "Uh-huh." Coming closer, gaze still fixed on my cock and his voice a hoarse whisper, he added, "I'm here." I glanced down, then back up at Brad, and slowly, carefully, started stroking myself to give him a show. Just in time, too. He bit his lip as he watched my hand moving up and down. "Yeah, I am." "Whoa. Now that you are," I shivered, and my toes curled. Spreading my knees wide, I nodded toward my cock. "Why don't you help me out with this, After pausing to take off his shoes, Brad climbed onto the bed, and he knelt between my thighs and... "Oh, fuck," I growled as my cock slipped between soft lips and into the wet heat of his mouth. I wanted to enjoy this even more than I'd wanted to savor my fantasies, but damn, I was so turned on this wasn't going to take long at all. "We're going to get a quick round out of the way now," I murmured, combing my fingers through his blonde hair. "And then I'm going to take my sweet, sweet time with you." The promise was rewarded with a throaty growl that reverberated against my cock. Oh yeah, this would be a quick round. Such a talented, eager mouth after such a long dry spell. There was no drawing this out. "That's it," I whispered. Yeah, that's it." Brad moaned, his head bobbing faster as he gave me even more. I moistened my lips. "Your hand. Use your hand." He shifted, and then his strong fingers were around the base of my spit-slicked cock, and he stroked in time with his mouth sliding up and down the shaft. "God, yeah," I breathed. "Just like that." I forced my eyes to stay open even as the intense build threatened to force them shut. Damn it, I needed to see him as he drove me over the edge. Watching and feeling him blow me like this was taking me over that edge. I managed a whispered warning that I was close, followed by "fuck" just as my back arched and I gripped his hair and the edge of the mattress as I came on his tongue, his groans driving me on as much as his talented hand and mouth. Releasing a harsh breath, I dropped back against the pillow I hadn't even realized I'd levitated off. As Brad sat up, wiping an unsteady hand across his mouth, I wondered if I'd thrust into his throat harder than I'd intended to. I didn't. I struggled to catch my breath and form words. That wasn't too forceful, was it? He grinned, eyes gleaming and lips ever so slightly swollen. I like it like that. Oh, fuck, yes. I reached for him. Come here. He did, and I curved a hand behind his neck and pulled him in, and our lips met in a hungry, cum-salted kiss. God, he was even better at this than he was at sucking dick, and that said something. I'd wanted to kiss Brad in the club, but I'd restrained myself. We were public figures, after all, and we'd been in a public place. Now that we were behind closed doors without the possibility of being recorded and put on the internet for all to see, now that we were in a private enough place for him to blow me within 30 seconds of walking into the room, there was no reason to be discreet anymore. No need to hold back. I could have my fill of this gorgeous man's amazing mouth, and once I was hard again, I had every intention of doing more than just kissing him. When we broke the kiss, we were both out of breath and trembling. He met my eyes. Do you have any idea how much trouble we could get in for this? Uh-huh. I slid a hand down over his ass and squeezed the firm, round muscle through his jeans. Kinda hot, don't you think? Brad shivered. Yeah, that's what I was thinking all the way here. I grinned and moved in for another kiss. You clearly aren't put off by it. If he intended to say anything, it came out as little more than a muffled whimper when I kissed him, and then he was pulling me in close and kissing me even harder. I reached between us and slid a hand over that thick ridge below his belt, and he broke the kiss with a ragged, "Oh, fuck." I stroked him through his pants. I was kind of thinking the same thing. He closed his eyes and exhaled. He rocked his hips subtly, rutting against my palm, and I had to bite back a whimper of my own. Few things aroused me like a man who was aroused like this. It was heady stuff, getting someone this hard and shaky and breathless. There was nothing in a bottle that could ever take me higher than doing this to a man. And he wasn't even naked yet. Get these clothes out of the way, I growled. His lips curved against mine. Yes, coach. The brief reminder of why we shouldn't be here. Who was I kidding? It made me even hotter and made me want him that much more. Clothes. Off. He tugged at my shirt as he sat up. How about losing yours, too? Deal. We both rolled to our feet, and the clothes came off in a matter of seconds. As we moved back toward the bed, I paused because, oh my God, goalie or not, hockey players had a certain physique that had always made my pulse race. No amount of denial about my queerness had ever been able to compete against my desire for the ripped, powerful body of a man who spent most of his life on the ice. And Brad. Holy fuck. I'd seen him in pictures without his shirt, but in person he was something else. No airbrushing, no special lighting, just naked with a few scars and bruises that came with the territory of his job. He was all sculpted muscles, elaborate ink, and skin that needed to be kissed, licked, and bitten. Maybe I'd even add a few bruises to his collection if he liked it that rough. Lying back on the bed, he gazed up at me. You have condoms? Lube? I do. Let me grab those before we get comfortable. I went into the bathroom, pulled the lube and condoms from my shaving kit, and left them on the nightstand. Then I joined Brad in bed and... oh, yes. My hand was no substitute for this. For a man's hot, naked body flush against mine while we made out between the sheets. For the rush of breath across my cheek and those low, throaty moans and the scrape of nails running up my back or over my shoulder. For the feel of a thick erection between our bodies, especially when he kept subtly pushing it against me like he desperately needed some friction. I reached between us and gave him a slow, appreciative stroke. Brad's whole body tensed as he pulled in a ragged breath. Fuck. That's what I'm thinking. He looked at me with heavy-lidded eyes and licked his lips. Still can't decide what sounds hotter, he panted. The head coach giving me head, or... He pushed into my hand. Coaching me while I'm giving him head. I stroked him harder and let our lips brush just before I murmured, Well, you've already tried one. No reason you can't take both out for a spin, is there? Brad actually whimpered, and I thought I might lose my damn mind. I wanted him to make more sounds like that, so I nudged him onto his back. Before I'd even taken his cock between my lips, he was already murmuring, Fuck yeah. And when I ran my tongue around the head, he groaned and slid a trembling hand into my hair. Oh yeah, that's... Oh... I took my time exploring every inch of his cock. He and I were about the same size. No one would be casting us in pornos anytime soon, but we had what it took to get the job done, and I slowly worked my way up to deep-throating him. It had been way too long since I'd had a dick in my mouth, and I couldn't get enough of licking and teasing him. The sounds he made, low groans and the occasional deep, oh fuck, drove me wild. No wonder I was already getting hard again. I'd always loved sucking dick, and it was beyond hot when it resulted in appreciative moans and whispered curses, not to mention the occasional shiver as his fingers twitched in my hair. Brad squirmed, tightening his grip on my hair and pulling just hard enough to sting. God, I want to fuck. I lifted my head. Do you? Yeah. He arched under me as his fingers loosened again. Please. I grinned, moving up to kiss his hungry mouth again. You like to top or bottom? Anything. He met my gaze, eyes bright with the same intensity they always had on the ice, except it was all need and lust now. Didn't you say something about making up for all those goals I didn't allow? I sucked in a breath as I pressed my cock against his hip. That your way of saying you want me to fuck you? He nudged my hips up, and we both gasped this time when he wrapped his fingers around my erection. He was breathless as he said, You think I'm going to say no to this? I grinned and pulled him in again, and his kiss was even needier now. Not demanding, needing, wanting, begging. Brad didn't strike me as the submissive type any more than I probably pinged him as dominant, but tonight, now that he'd let down his guard and joined me in bed, he was silently pleading for anything I could give him. Anything you want, baby. Anything at all. I slid a hand behind his head, and he moaned into my kiss and held me closer to him. His body was hot and feverish against mine, his cock thick and hard against my hip, and holy fuck, I still couldn't believe this was how I was breaking my too long dry spell. From no sex at all to this? Fuck yes. Brad broke the kiss with a gasp, and when our eyes met, the desire in his was almost more than I could take. In a shaky whisper, he said, Condom. No. I brushed my lips across his, then reached for the pack I'd left on the bedside table. Turn over. I tore the wrapper. Unless you want to. But he was already shifting onto his hands and knees, and from the way he white-knuckled the edge of the mattress and bit his lip, he definitely wanted it like this. He couldn't wait for it, and neither could I. After some gentle prep to make sure he was ready for me, I guided myself in. We both moaned as the head of my cock slid into him, and in a semi-delirious moment of being so turned on I could barely see straight, I realized I'd been right, what I'd said at the club. That there was something kind of poetic about pushing my dick into the man who hadn't let the Krakens put a puck into the net. But mostly it was just hot. Lately my world had been nothing but pressure and hockey, and now there was nothing to do but focus on rocking myself deeper into the tight ass of this gorgeous, naked man who was begging for more. There was no forgetting the world we came from, though. It was etched into every plane and angle of his body. The very nature of hockey and its physical demands blessed nearly every player with a gorgeous ass, and I decided then and there that nothing in the world could be hotter than watching my cock sliding in and out between those powerful, round ass cheeks. That feels... Brad let his head fall forward, and the muscles in his back and shoulders rippled as a shudder went through him. Fuck. Yeah? I ran a hand up his back. How do you like it? Hard? Slow? Don't care? He shook his head and rocked back against me. Just like... You just like being fucked. Uh-huh. Perfect. I growled, because I'm in the mood to fuck this gorgeous ass tonight. He just moaned, and I couldn't help cursing under my breath. Once I was moving easily in and out, I leaned down and wrapped an arm around his stomach as I kissed the side of his neck. I couldn't move as fast in this position, but damn it, I needed to touch him and smell his heady scent and taste his skin. Feels so good. He rolled his hips a little. God, Anthony. I shivered. Oh, yeah. Say my name. But I was too turned on to speak. Instead, I sank my teeth into his shoulder, which got a whimper out of him, and then I drove into him harder, my thrusts rewarded with increasingly desperate moans. Oh, fuck. He gripped the edge of the mattress and rocked back, meeting me thrust for thrust. That's so good. Yeah, it is. I kissed the spot I'd bitten, then growled in his ear. You feel amazing. He arched against me and moaned, the sound helpless and choked, and thank God I'd already come once tonight, or this would have been over by now. It had been so long since I'd done this, even longer since I'd been with someone this sexy and eager and tight, and I wanted to savor every stroke. Hard, he pleaded. Do it hard. Yeah? The sound he made wasn't a word, but it was definitely a yes. I kissed his shoulder again, then sat up, got a good grip on his powerful hips, and gave it to him hard. He cried out, more non-words that egged me on, and he shifted onto one hand so he could touch himself while I rode him. The view alone turned me on so much my head spun and my eyes watered. The feel, his hips in my hands, his ass tight around my cock, the steady build of my second orgasm of the night, was mind-blowing too, but if this had been a first-person porno, I still would have gotten off in no time. He had the most beautiful body, and he made the most amazing sounds, and he'd already raised the bar for any man who came along after him. My muscles ached. His probably did too, especially after tonight's game. Sweat darkened and curled the ends of his blonde hair, and it slid down my back and slicked my hands as I tried to keep a grip on him. We were both panting hard, my heart pounding as I kept slamming into him, and I just begged my muscles to hold out a little longer. I might not be able to move tomorrow, but hell if I was stopping before Brad lost his mind. Little by little, the muscles in Brad's neck and shoulders started to tense. Oh, fuck. I'm gonna come. God. He rocked back and forth, fucking himself hard on my cock while he furiously stroked his own. I slowed down just so I could enjoy the show. I couldn't imagine any view that was sexier than this. Adonis himself frantically riding my dick from below and pumping himself as his moans devolved into sharp gasps and whispered curses. Come for me, I purred. That's it, baby. He gasped and shuddered, clenching around me, and I took over. I grabbed his hips again and fucked him deep and hard, and he cried out as he jerked and shuddered with the force of his orgasm, hauling me right over the edge with him. In seconds, I went from holding on to him so I could thrust into him to holding on so I didn't collapse from the sheer force of my orgasm. Christ. With a ragged sigh, I pulled out, and we both dropped onto the bed on our backs, breathing hard and trembling. Holy fuck. He murmured. Uh-huh. I'd get rid of the condom in a sec. First, I needed to. Jesus, I was out of breath. and dizzy, and more satisfied than I'd been in ages. I'm not gonna lie. Still breathing hard, he tried and failed to hide a smug grin. There is something seriously satisfying about screwing around with the other team's coach right after winning the cup. I patted his thigh. I won't bitch about fucking the goalie who kept my team from winning that cup. Brad's laugh nearly had me turned on all over again. God knew if I had anything left in me tonight, since I hadn't been 20 for a long time, but I could absolutely see myself getting Brad off again, after we'd relaxed a bit, and showered, which we would, in a minute. I trailed my fingertips over his smooth abs, and he gasped. The muscles tensed, emphasizing that trademark hockey player six-pack. By the way, if it's not obvious, I'm really glad you showed up tonight. Yeah. He looked in my eyes. Me too. He studied me for a moment. I know we shouldn't do this, but one night won't kill us, will it? I don't know. I slid my hand up his sculpted arm. It might. Grinning, he kissed me again. Could think of worse ways to go. Uh-huh. Me too. And right then, I didn't care if one night did kill us, because sex like this was worth it.